Do you suffer from GERD or acid reflux every single day? Has it left you with anxiety when it comes to eat? Are you worried constantly about the food that you're eating is going to trigger an acid reflux attack? And are you sticking to the same old bland foods every day just to avoid these type of attacks? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then today's video is for you. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to cover the #1 cause of acid reflux, and it's not too much acid, how you can stop the acid coming back up into your esophagus, even if you've tried everything else, and you could never get it to be fixed before. And finally, why a hiatal hernia is not the root cause of your reflux, but a symptom of an underlying problem. And if you stay to the end of this video, I'm going to give you 4 specific tips to help you improve your digestion so you don't suffer from these problems again in the future. Now, you've probably been told that acid reflux and GERD is caused by too much acid. But what if I told you that GERD and acid reflux isn't caused by too much acid, but acid in the wrong place? Let me explain. This is because the root of acid reflux is a twofold problem. The first problem is that you have low stomach acid. And when you have low stomach acid, it doesn't signal to that lower esophageal sphincter to close. So when that stays open, acid comes out of your stomach into your esophagus and causes that burning. The second problem is direct interference with that les or lower esophageal sphincter. Did you know there are only 2 main things that can cause that problem with the lower esophageal sphincter? Well, the first one and the most common one is a bacteria called H. pylori. Now, you've probably been tested for this, but I'm going to show you why I think a lot of the testing is inadequate and what you can do instead. So H. pylori or Helicobacter pylori is a bacteria that is known to cause stomach ulcers, stomach cancer, and acid reflux. The way it works is it will release an enzyme called urase once it's inside the stomach, and that urase enzyme increases the pH of the acidity of your stomach, which means it makes the environment less acidic. It does that because it loves a low acid environment. It's easier for the bacteria to survive. Not only that, but H. pylori can interfere directly with that lower esophageal sphincter, causing a 1-2 punch causing acid reflux by suppressing acid levels and then interfering with that lower esophageal sphincter. But not only that, it can cause stomach ulcers in some people and even lead to stomach cancer. Now, lots of people get tested via breath test or blood test or stool test. In my opinion, the only really accurate method to test H. pylori is to have an endoscopy, but you must be off your PPI medication for at least 15 days. Otherwise, you have a 56% chance of getting a false negative. So make sure you speak to your doctor about this before you have an endoscopy. So I had H. pylori and I didn't want to take antibiotics for it. So I developed a supplement called pylori that contains 5 herbs that have been shown to kill the H. pylori bacteria. Now, I speak to a lot of different people who've tried H. pylori and said they were negative for it, but it works. So if you think that you have H. pylori or you'd like to rule it out and you don't want to try the antibiotics first, I recommend you try the herbs in pylori. I'll link them in the description below. Now, in my opinion, the second biggest cause of lower esophageal sphincter dysfunction is a yeast called Candida. Now, Candida is a family of yeast that are commensal. Commensal means in small amounts they are beneficial, but in large amounts, when they start to take over your microbiome, they can cause a lot of problems. You generally get an overgrowth of Candida because you have antibiotics. Now, antibiotics kill beneficial bacteria and then they allow the fungus to grow because bacteria don't work against fungus. For that, you need antifungals. So if you take some antibiotics, you can reduce the beneficial bacteria and now the fungus is left to overgrow. Also, if you take lots of alcohol, drugs, ultra processed food, lots of sugars, that can all feed the yeast to overgrow. If you're not sure whether you have too much yeast inside your system, yeast normally appears on the outside of the body. Fungal toenails, fungal fingernails, athlete's foot, dandruff, thrush. If you have those and you have acid reflux, you could probably say you have what's called a yeast-based acid reflux, and Candida is your root cause problem. Now, Candida was my original issue when I first had GERD and acid reflux. The problem is they don't test for it in an endoscopy, and most doctors are not even aware that it can cause acid reflux. So if you think that sounds like you and you have this problem, don't waste 5 years of your life like I did trying to figure out what the problem was. It's probably yeast. I made a supplement called Yeast Purge. It contains 5 different antifungals to kill that overgrowth of yeast and a couple of things that will help grow your beneficial bacteria to keep the remaining yeast in check. In my opinion, those are the 2 biggest causes of acid reflux. So how do you prevent getting these problems in the first place? So before I give you 4 tips to improve your digestion to reduce your chance of you catching these problems in the future, I want to talk quickly about a hiatal hernia. So a hiatal hernia is when the stomach ends up inside the esophagus, and most people think that that's the root cause of their acid reflux. Personally, I think it is a symptom and not a root cause. And I'll explain why. I had a client, his name was Ben. Ben went for an endoscopy and he saw a 7-centimeter hernia as confirmed via endoscopy. Yet when he went back a year later, the hernia had gone. There was no sign of a hernia at all. I think the hernias slide up and they slide down based on how much pressure is inside the stomach. If you can get to the root of something that's causing the pressure, for example, like H. pylori, then the hernia should be allowed to come back down by itself. And I think that's also why when people have hernia surgery, it doesn't always work. Sometimes if the pressure is too big and you didn't fix the problem of pressure, you just create a hernia again, even after you've had surgery. So let's look at these 4 ways to improve digestion so you can prevent these issues in the future. Number 1, keeping your stomach acid high. When you go through periods of stress, your body will naturally reduce your acid production. If your body is busy being stressed, it's not worried about digesting yesterday's dinner, so it will suppress your acid production. Short term, you can take some HCl, which is hydrochloric acid tablets, before you eat, and that will keep your stomach acid high during periods of stress to reduce the likelihood of you catching things like H. pylori bacteria. Second thing we can do is to eat early in the day. The digestive processes, so that stomach acid production and enzyme production from the pancreas, work better in the earlier part of the day than later. The later you eat and the closer you eat to bedtime, the more chance you're going to get reflux because there's still going to be a lot of food inside your stomach, and again that can interfere with the lower esophageal sphincter. Chewing more starts off the digestive phase much earlier than before it gets to your stomach. When you do that, it makes all the downstream digestive processes easier, and you want to make your digestion as easy as possible if you're someone who's prone to acid reflux. I recommend putting your knife and fork down at least 10 times during your meal to allow you to chew more. And finally, fixing the issue at the root, such as killing overgrowth of Candida or H. pylori, is the best way to fix your acid reflux long term. Almost all the other solutions, including the drugs, will just cover up your symptoms temporarily, which can be very useful to buy you time to figure out your underlying problem. But remember, covering up your issue is not fixing your underlying problem. Only once you fix your issue, you won't need those other things. Hopefully that's helpful. If you like these tips, please follow and subscribe and click that bell notification so you don't miss when we go live for videos.